"Don't come home. Your sister doesn't want you there," my parents said, years later at my wedding. Part 1. The Exile on Top of the World. From the 45th floor of my corner office in Hudson Yards, the Manhattan skyline looked like a circuit board of gold and diamonds. I adjusted the lapel of my black Saint Laurent blazer, staring at my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling glass. I was Audrey Vance, the most ruthless crisis management CEO in New York City. I fixed billionaires' reputations for a living. I made scandals disappear. But as I looked down at my iPad Pro, a notification popped up that I couldn't simply delete. Subject: please read. It's about your father. My heart hammered against my ribs, betraying the icy composure I was famous for. It had been 10 years. 10 years since the night the sky opened up over our rusted industrial town in Pennsylvania. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I was 18. I stood on the porch, shivering in the freezing rain, clutching a broken handle of a suitcase that contained everything I owned. My father, Robert, stood in the doorway, his face twisted in disgust. Behind him, my younger sister, Bella, smirked, clutching the pearl necklace I was accused of stealing, the one she had actually pawned and then planted the receipt in my bag. "Get out!" my father had spat, throwing my acceptance letter to NYU into the mud. "We don't raise thieves in this house. Bella is the only daughter we have now. Don't come home, Audrey. Nobody wants you here." The door had slammed shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot. That was the last time I saw them. I shook the memory away, my grip tightening on the iPad. I tapped the screen. The email from my mother was short, riddled with typos, and clearly desperate. "Audrey, I know we haven't spoken, but your father, it's stage 4 cancer. He doesn't have much time left. He just wants to see you one last time before you get married. Please, don't be cruel." I let out a shaky breath, turning back to the window. The city lights blurred. I had rebuilt myself from nothing. I had money, power, and in 3 weeks I was marrying Ethan, a man who treated me like royalty. I didn't need them. I didn't need their drama. But the phrase "stage 4" gnawed at my conscience. Was it a trap, or was it a final chance for closure? I picked up my phone to call Ethan, unaware that by opening that door to the past, I wasn't just inviting my parents to my wedding, I was inviting a hurricane into my perfect life. The elevator ride down 45 floors felt like a free fall. By the time I stepped out of the lobby and into the biting New York wind, my hands were trembling. I wasn't shaking from the cold. I was shaking from the ghost of the girl I used to be, the scared teenager, desperate for her father's approval. A silver Volvo XC90 pulled up to the curb, cutting through the line of yellow taxis. It was a sensible, safe car, perfectly befitting Ethan Caldwell, the gentle university professor I was about to marry, or so I thought. I slid into the passenger seat, the heated Napa leather instantly wrapping me in warmth. Ethan leaned over and kissed my cheek. He smelled of sandalwood and old books. "Rough day?" he asked, his voice low and steady. He adjusted his glasses, the streetlights reflecting off the gold rims. "Worse," I whispered. I handed him my phone, the email from my mother still glowing on the screen. "They want to come to the wedding, Ethan. They say my dad is dying." I waited for him to tell me to delete it. I waited for him to remind me of the night I cried on his shoulder, telling him how they had framed me for theft. Ethan was protective. He loathed injustice. But Ethan didn't frown. He didn't look angry. Instead, he stared at the screen for a long moment, and a strange, unreadable expression flickered across his face. It was almost cold, a calculated look that vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by his usual warm smile. "You should invite them," he said calmly, handing the phone back. I blinked, stunned. "What?" "Ethan, they threw me out like garbage. They haven't called in a decade." "Exactly," Ethan said, shifting the car into gear. He glanced at his wrist, checking the time on his Omega Seamaster. "If you don't invite them, Audrey, you'll always wonder if you were the cruel one. You'll wonder if you walked away from a dying man." He merged seamlessly into the chaotic Manhattan traffic, his grip on the steering wheel relaxed, but firm. "Bring them here," he continued, his tone smooth as velvet. "Let them see the woman you've become. Let them see you standing at the altar in the Pierre, successful and loved. That is the best revenge, isn't it? Success?" I looked at him, feeling a surge of gratitude. He was right. He was always the rational one, the moral compass to my cynicism. "You're too good for me, Ethan," I murmured. "I just want what's best for you," he replied. I leaned my head against the window, watching the city blur by, feeling safer than I had in years. I had no idea that my gentle academic fiancé hadn't just glanced at the email. He had already run a background check on my parents 3 days ago. He knew my father wasn't dying. He knew about the gambling debts, and he wasn't inviting them for a reunion. He was inviting them into a slaughterhouse. 2 days later, I stood in the lobby of my apartment building on the Upper East Side. The space was a cathedral of silence and money, with floors made of Italian marble and a concierge who knew exactly when to look away. The air smelled of fresh lilies and exclusivity. Then the automatic door slid open, and the atmosphere shattered. They walked in like tourists entering a museum they intended to loot. My mother, Linda, always wore a fur coat that looked tragic under the harsh glare of the crystal chandelier. My father, Robert, the man supposedly knocking on death's door, leaned heavily on a cane. He offered a theatrical cough, but his eyes were sharp, darting around the lobby, appraising the value of the velvet armchairs. And then came Bella. My sister hadn't changed. She was still beautiful in a chaotic, manufactured way. She wore oversized sunglasses indoors and dragged a scuffed, hard-shell Samsonite suitcase across the polished floor, the wheels making a grating noise that made the concierge wince. "Wow," Bella said, her voice echoing too loudly off the stone walls. She lowered her sunglasses, smirking at me. "So this is where you've been hiding. A bit sterile, isn't it? Looks like a dentist's office." I didn't answer. I just watched. My arms crossed over my chest. "We missed you, honey," my mother said, stepping forward with open arms. I didn't move. She stopped awkwardly, patting her hair. "Where is the rest of your luggage?" I asked, my voice flat. "Oh, the driver is bringing it," Bella said casually, checking her reflection in a brass pillar. "He's struggling a bit." The revolving door spun again. My stomach dropped to the floor. It wasn't a hired chauffeur. It was Mark, the boy I had loved in high school, the boy who had promised to wait for me, only to sleep with Bella a week after I was kicked out. He looked older now, worn down, wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit his broad shoulders. He was struggling with 3 heavy floral bags. "Mark?" I choked out, my composure slipping for a fraction of a second. Bella giggled, a cruel, sharp sound. Oh, didn't we tell you? Mark drives for Daddy now. He's been so helpful since he lost his job at the factory. We couldn't just leave him behind, could we? He's practically family." Mark wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at his shoes, his face flushing red with humiliation. I realized instantly what this was. It wasn't a reunion. It was a psychological ambush. They brought him to rattle me, to remind me of my past heartbreak, to show me that they still owned pieces of my history. I straightened my spine, channeling every ounce of ice I had learned in the corporate boardrooms of New York. I looked right past Mark, treating him like the invisible help they claimed he was. I turned to the concierge, my voice devoid of emotion. "Henry, please show the driver to the service elevator around the corner. My guests can take the main lift." Dinner that evening was at Daniel, a 2-Michelin-star institution where the lighting was golden and the silence was expensive. I had booked a private alcove hoping to contain the disaster, but my family seemed determined to be a spectacle. My father sat at the head of the table, looking like a caricature of a dying man. He slumped in his chair, occasionally pressing a handkerchief to his mouth, producing a dry, rasping cough that seemed to start and stop on command. "The doctors say it's in the lungs," he wheezed, pushing away his plate of foie gras. He reached across the pristine white tablecloth, his calloused hand seeking mine. "I just wanted to see you happy, Audrey, before the lights go out." I felt a knot tighten in my throat. Despite everything, the theft accusations, the 10 years of silence, he was still my father. Seeing him frail triggered an instinctive childish need to fix things. I reached into my purse, my fingers brushing against the cold metal of my Chase private client card. There was $50,000 in that account. Emergency money? Maybe if I pay for better doctors, I thought. Maybe this is my chance to be the good daughter. I was about to pull the card out when a small, clear voice cut through the heavy atmosphere. "Grandpa!" We all froze. Sitting in the corner of the booth was Mia, Bella's 6-year-old daughter. She had been ignored by everyone all night, her face buried in a sticky iPad playing Minecraft. Now she was looking up, her large eyes blinking behind thick glasses. "Why are you coughing like that?" Mia asked innocently. "You were smoking those big cigars on the balcony this morning. You said the smoke makes you strong like a dragon." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the waiters seemed to pause. My father's hand froze halfway to mine. The wheeze vanished from his throat. Bella kicked Mia under the table, hard. "Shut up, Mia!" Bella hissed, her voice venomous. "Go back to your game." "Ow!" Mia cried out, rubbing her shin. I watched the scene unfold in slow motion. The sick man who smoked cigars. The worried sister who kicked her own child. The mask had slipped just for a second, but it was enough. I slowly withdrew my hand from my purse, leaving the credit card untouched. The warmth in my chest turned to absolute zero. I picked up my glass of French Bordeaux, swirling the dark red liquid. "Cigars, Dad?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. "I thought the doctors said it was the lungs." My father cleared his throat, sitting up straighter, his miraculous recovery sudden and clumsy. "It's figurative, Audrey. The child has an imagination. You know how kids are." "Yes," I said, taking a sip of wine and looking straight at Bella. "I know exactly how honest kids are, unlike adults." The next morning, I stood on the pedestal at the bridal salon, enveloped in layers of silk and organza. The dress was a custom Oscar de la Renta, a masterpiece of architectural lace that cost more than my parents' house. "It's breathtaking, Miss Vance," the stylist whispered, adjusting the train. I looked in the mirror, allowing myself a rare moment of vulnerability. For the first time, I felt like a bride, not a CEO. "I need to use the restroom," I said. "Don't let anyone touch it." I stepped out, leaving the dress on the mannequin in the private fitting suite. But as I walked down the hall, instinct, honed by years of managing corporate espionage, made me pause. I pulled out my iPhone 15 Pro Max and opened the Smart Home app. Earlier, I had slipped a tiny motion-activated camera onto the shelf, disguised as a button. Paranoia? Maybe. Necessity? Absolutely. On my screen, the fitting room door creaked open. Bella slipped inside. She looked around furtively, her face twisted in a sneer of pure jealousy. She walked up to the dress, running her hands roughly over the delicate lace. "Who does she think she is?" Bella muttered, her voice tinny through the phone speaker. "She thinks she's a queen?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a tube of bright red lipstick. My breath hitched. She uncapped it, hovering the crimson tip inches from the pristine white bodice. I should have run back. I should have screamed. But I didn't move. I stood in the hallway, watching the screen with a strange detachment. I saw her hesitate. She didn't destroy the front. Instead, she knelt down and smeared a thick red line along the inner hem of the train, hidden enough to be missed now, but guaranteed to stain the floor and ruin the photos as I walked down the aisle. It was petty. It was malicious. And it was recorded in 4K resolution. I didn't stop her. I turned off the phone and walked back toward the suite, my heels clicking loudly on the floor to announce my arrival. When I entered, Bella was sitting on the velvet sofa, scrolling through Instagram, looking bored. The lipstick was gone. "Took you long enough," she drawled. "This place smells like old money and desperation." I smiled at her. It wasn't a nice smile. "Just soaking it in, Bella, just soaking it in." I looked at the dress. I wouldn't wear it. I would buy another one. But that red stain, that was going to cost her everything she had. While Audrey was dealing with the dress, a different kind of negotiation was happening across town. The bar at the St. Regis Hotel was dimly lit, smelling of aged leather and cognac. Ethan sat in a corner booth, sipping sparkling water. He looked every bit the harmless academic in his tweed jacket, grading papers on his tablet. My mother, Linda, slid into the seat opposite him. She didn't order a drink. She placed a thick manila envelope on the table between them. "You're a smart man, Ethan," she began, her voice dripping with fake concern. "A professor at Columbia, respected, clean reputation." Ethan didn't look up from his tablet. "I try, Mrs. Vance." "It would be a shame," Linda continued, tapping a manicured fingernail on the envelope, "if the university found out they were employing the husband of a criminal." Ethan finally looked up. He adjusted his glasses, his expression mild. "I beg your pardon?" Linda pushed the envelope toward him. "Inside are police reports from 10 years ago, theft, shoplifting, and medical records from a clinic in Pennsylvania, an abortion she had at 18, a messy one." It was a lie, all of it. The police reports were for charges that were dropped due to lack of evidence, and the medical records were forged. Bella's history, photocopied with Audrey's name, pasted over the top. "I imagine the Board of Trustees wouldn't like a scandal," Linda said, her eyes gleaming with greed. "But for a dowry of $500,000, I could make sure these documents disappear forever. Consider it a wedding gift from mother to son-in-law." Ethan stared at the envelope. He didn't open it. He didn't check the contents. He simply reached out and placed his hand over it. $500,000, Ethan repeated thoughtfully. "That's a specific number." "It's a fair price for peace of mind," Linda smiled, thinking she had hooked him. Ethan picked up the envelope. He didn't look scared. He looked bored. He slid the envelope into his leather briefcase next to his Bottega Veneta wallet. "I'll need a few days to liquidate some assets," Ethan said smoothly. "I assume you want cash?" "Cash is best," Linda beamed, or standing up. "You're a good man, Ethan. Audrey is lucky to have someone who cleans up her messes." She walked away, hips swaying, convinced she had just won the lottery. She didn't see Ethan pull out his phone and dial a number. "It's me," he said into the receiver, his voice dropping an octave, losing all its warmth. She took the bait, initiate phase 2, and get the forensic team ready to authenticate forged medical documents. The pre-wedding celebration was disguised as a charity gala at a rooftop venue in Soho. It was a black tie and mask event, sophisticated and mysterious. Waiters circulated with trays of Dom Perignon, and the air buzzed with the chatter of New York's elite. I stood by the balcony, wearing a sleek black velvet gown and a diamond necklace from Cartier, a gift from Ethan. I watched the crowd, my nerves pulled tight as violin strings. Then Bella arrived. She had ignored the black tie dress code entirely. She wore a neon pink sequined dress that was cut too low and hemmed too high. She stumbled in, already drunk, holding a selfie stick with her phone attached. She was live streaming to her 20,000 followers, most of whom were bots. "Hey, guys," she shouted at her phone, slurring her words. "Look at this. My sister, the rich snob pretending she cares about charity. Meanwhile, she left our parents to rot in a shack." She marched toward the small stage where the microphone stood. The guests, bankers, artists, politicians, parted like the Red Sea, staring at her in horror. "Audrey," Bella yelled, pointing the phone at me, Tell them how you abandoned Mom and Dad. Tell them you're a fake." My mother, standing near the buffet, didn't stop her. She watched with a smirk, waiting for me to be humiliated, waiting for me to break so they could swoop in and save me for a price. I didn't break. I walked calmly to the stage, taking the microphone from the stand before Bella could grab it. I looked into her camera lens, then out at the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice steady and amplified. "My sister is passionate, isn't she? She's right. Family is important." Bella froze, confused. "That is why," I continued, gesturing to the giant screen behind me, "tonight's gala is dedicated to the most vulnerable member of our family. I am personally donating $1 million to the National Autism Association." The screen flashed with a photo of Mia, smiling shyly. "In the name of my niece, Mia Vance, to ensure that children who are neglected by their guardians get the support they deserve." The room erupted in applause. Bella stood there, mouth agape. The comments on her live stream exploded. "Wow, your sister is a saint." "You're drunk at a charity event?" "She just donated $1 million for your kid." Bella turned red. She had come to paint me as a villain, but I had just bought the narrative. And in doing so, I had made Mia the hero and Bella the chaotic, unfit mother. I raised my glass to her. "For the children, right, Bella?" Humiliated but not defeated, Bella changed tactics. The next morning she showed up at my apartment with a peace offering, 2 tickets to the exclusive spa at the Mandarin Oriental. "I'm sorry about last night," she said, managing to squeeze out a few fake tears. "I was just jealous. Can we just have a sister day? Please, Audrey." I knew it was a trap. Bella didn't do apologies, but I needed to keep her close to execute Ethan's plan. "Fine," I said. "Let's go." The spa was a sanctuary of bamboo and steam. We lay on massage tables, wrapped in plush robes, the scent of Joe Malone lime and basil candles filling the air. The therapist applied a La Mer facial mask and left us alone. "So," Bella whispered, her voice too casual, "Ethan seems nice. But isn't he a bit boring for you? I mean, a professor? Does he even make enough to pay for this wedding?" I turned my head slightly. I saw Bella's hand dangling off the table, her phone face down on the floor. The recording app was running. I could see the faint red glow reflecting off the polished teak wood. She wanted sound bites. She wanted me to call Ethan a loser, or admit I was marrying him for some secret reason so she could send it to him and blow up the wedding. I smiled under my mask. Two can play this game. Money isn't everything, Bella, I sighed dramatically. Actually, I feel bad for him. He works so hard, that's why I'm planning a surprise. Bella perked up. A surprise? Yes, I lied smoothly. I bought a brownstone in Brooklyn. It's fully renovated. I was thinking maybe I should give it to you and Mom. You know, to make up for the past. I haven't told Ethan yet because he might think it's too generous. I watched Bella's hand twitch. She quickly reached down and tapped her phone screen, stopping the recording. She didn't want that on tape. If Ethan heard I was giving them a house, he might stop it. She needed to keep that secret. "Oh, Audrey," Bella gushed, sitting up, her greed instantly replacing her malice. "That is so sweet of you. We would love that. You're the best sister ever." "Just don't tell anyone," I whispered. "It has to be our secret until after the wedding." "My lips are sealed," she promised. I closed my eyes, letting the expensive cream soak into my skin. She was so predictable. By dangling a fake carrot, I had just bought her silence and ensured she wouldn't try to sabotage the wedding ceremony itself. She wouldn't risk losing a free house. 3 days before the wedding, my father played his ace card. He invited me and Ethan to their hotel suite for coffee and closure. The suite was a mess of room service trays and scattered clothes, a stark contrast to the elegance of the hotel. My father sat in an armchair, looking solemn. He placed a single sheet of paper on the coffee table. "Audrey," he began, his voice heavy with emotion, "I know we can't undo the past, but I want to secure your future. This is a deed transfer. I'm signing over the family home in Pennsylvania to you. It's not much, but it's where you grew up. It's my legacy to you." He pushed the paper toward me, along with a heavy gold-plated Parker pen. "Just sign here to accept the transfer," he said. "The notary is downstairs." I looked at the document. It looked legitimate. Transfer of deed. My heart softened. The old house, my grandmother's garden. Was he really trying to give me something? Was this an actual act of love? I picked up the pen. My hand hovered over the signature line. "Wait." Ethan's voice was sharp, cutting through the sentimental fog. He reached out and grabbed my wrist, stopping the pen inches from the paper. "Ethan?" I asked, confused. "It's just the house." "Is it?" Ethan stood up, his demeanor shifting from polite professor to cold analyst. He pulled a small UV flashlight from his pocket, a tool used for checking counterfeit currency, or in his case, forensic document examination. "What are you doing?" my father snapped, standing up. "This is insulting." Ethan ignored him. He shone the purple light over the document. Under the UV beam, faint yellow text appeared between the lines of the visible black ink. It wasn't magic. It was thermal reactive ink, designed to appear later or under heat processing. The hidden text didn't say transfer of deed. It read, "Power of attorney and assumption of liability." "It's a debt transfer," Ethan said, his voice like ice. "By signing this, Audrey wouldn't be getting a house. She would be assuming legal responsibility for your gambling debts, Robert, all $400,000 of them." I dropped the pen as if it were burning hot. I stared at the paper, then at my father. He wasn't looking at me with love. He was looking at me with panic. "You tried to trick me," I whispered. the nausea rising in my throat. "You tried to sell me into debt." "You have millions," my father shouted, his mask falling completely. "You wouldn't even miss it. We raised you. You owe us." Ethan stepped between us, a wall of protective rage. "She owes you nothing. And this is fraud." I stumbled out of the hotel suite, gasping for air. The hallway carpet spun beneath my feet. I barely made it to the elevator before my legs gave out. I slid down the wall, burying my face in my hands. It wasn't just anger, it was a visceral, physical rejection of the truth. My father hadn't just been cruel, he had been predatory. He saw me not as a daughter, but as a financial escape hatch. The elevator doors opened, and Ethan was there. He didn't say a word. He just crouched down and pulled me into his arms. I buried my face in his chest, smelling the starch of his shirt and the faint scent of his cologne. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I felt hollowed out. "I want them gone," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Cancel the wedding invites. Get security to throw them out. I never want to see them again." Ethan stroked my hair, his touch gentle, but his eyes hard as flint. "We can do that," he said softly. "We can send them back to Pennsylvania tonight. They'll go back to their debt, their misery, and they'll spend the rest of their lives blaming you. They'll tell everyone you abandoned them." I looked up at him. "I don't care what people think anymore." "I know," Ethan said, "but Audrey, if you send them away now, they get off easy. They lose a payday, sure, but they don't face justice." He pulled a small bottle of water from his bag and handed it to me. "They tried to commit fraud against you. They tried to blackmail me. And I suspect—" He paused, his jaw tightening. "I suspect they are doing something far worse to Mia." The mention of Mia snapped me back to reality. The little girl with the sad eyes. If I kicked them out, Mia would go with them. She would be dragged back to that toxic house, raised by Bella, used as a pawn just like I was. "What are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying we don't cancel the wedding," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "We let them come. We let them think they've won. We let them walk into the Pierre thinking they're about to get rich. And then we take everything from them, publicly, legally, permanently." He stood up and offered me his hand. "Do you trust me?" I looked at his hand, the hand of a professor who carried a UV light, the hand of a man who was clearly more than he appeared. I took it. "Make them pay, Ethan." The night before the wedding, I went down to the hotel's underground garage to retrieve a forgotten bag from my car. The concrete bunker was cold and echoed with the hum of ventilation fans. As I walked toward my vehicle, a shadow detached itself from a pillar. It was Mark. I instinctively reached for the pepper spray on my keychain, my body tensing. "Stay back, Mark. I have security on speed dial." He raised his hands in surrender. He looked terrible, eyes bloodshot, his cheap suit rumpled. He wasn't the arrogant boy who broke my heart. He was a broken man. "I'm not here to hurt you, Audrey," he rasped. "I'm here to warn you." I paused, keeping my distance. "Warn me about what?" "I already know about the fraud. I know about the blackmail." "No." Mark shook his head frantically. "You don't know the end game. Bella, she's planning to run." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "She knows she's in deep debt. She knows the loan sharks are coming for her legs if she doesn't pay up next week. If she doesn't get money from you at the wedding, she's going to take Mia and disappear. She has fake passports ready. She's going to use the kid as leverage, Audrey, or worse, sell her custody to some shady adoption ring she found online." My blood ran cold. "That's insane. Even Bella wouldn't—" "She would," Mark hissed. Why do you think I'm still driving for them? Why do you think I put up with their abuse? I'm trying to protect the kid. I'm not her father, but Mia. She's the only innocent thing in that house." He reached into his jacket. I flinched, but he only pulled out a crumpled flash drive. "This is everything," he said, placing it on the hood of a nearby Porsche 911. "Audio recordings of them planning it. Photos of the fake passports. Take it. Save the kid, Audrey, please." He looked at me one last time, his eyes filled with a decade of regret. "I should have chosen you, Audrey. I've been paying for that mistake every single day." He turned and ran into the shadows before I could say a word. I snatched the flash drive, my hands shaking. The game had changed. It wasn't just about money or revenge anymore. It was a rescue mission. I didn't go back to my room. I went straight to Ethan. We plugged the flash drive into his laptop, and what we heard made my skin crawl. Bella's voice, clear and cruel, laughing about how much Mia would fetch on the black market if the rich sister plan failed. "We have to get her out, now," I said, grabbing my coat. "Agreed," Ethan said. He didn't call the police, not yet. That would take too long, and Bella might panic and run. He called a private medical transport team instead. 20 minutes later, we were banging on the door of the Vance family suite. Bella opened it, wearing a silk robe, looking annoyed. "What now? Can a girl get her beauty sleep before—" I didn't let her finish. I pushed past her into the room. It smelled of stale pizza and neglect. My parents were snoring in the bedroom. Mia was curled up on the sofa, shivering under a thin blanket. "Hey!" Bella shrieked. "You can't just barge in here." I ignored her and knelt beside Mia. Her forehead was burning hot. She looked at me with glassy eyes. "Auntie Audrey? My tummy hurts. Mommy gave me the pink medicine so I would sleep." I looked at the bottle on the table. It wasn't medicine. It was adult sleeping pills. Rage, pure and white-hot, flooded my veins. I turned to Bella and slapped her, hard. The sound cracked through the room like a whip. Bella stumbled back, clutching her cheek, stunned into silence. "You drugged her?" I hissed. "You drugged your own daughter?" "She was being annoying," Bella yelled, recovering her defiance. "She wouldn't shut up about you. Get out." Ethan stepped forward, blocking Bella as two paramedics in uniform entered the room. They gently scooped Mia up. "What are you doing? That's kidnapping!" Bella screamed, lunging for Mia. Ethan caught Bella's wrist effortlessly. He leaned in, his voice a low growl. "Touch her again, and I will break your arm. This is a medical emergency extraction, and if you call the police, I will play this recording for them right now." He held up his phone. Bella froze. She recognized her own voice on the tape. "We'll see you at the wedding, Bella," I said, smoothing my coat as the paramedics carried Mia out to safety. "Don't be late. You have a role to play." The wedding day arrived with a deceptively clear blue sky. The Pierre Hotel on Fifth Avenue was transformed into a fortress of white roses and crystal chandeliers. The air buzzed with the quiet power of Wall Street titans, tech moguls, and old money socialites. I sat in the bridal suite, staring at my reflection. My makeup was flawless, hiding the dark circles from a sleepless night. I wasn't wearing the Oscar de la Renta dress Bella had ruined. Instead, I wore a sleek architectural gown by Vera Wang, sharp, modern, and untouched by her poison. My phone buzzed. It was a text from the private clinic. "Mia is stable. The sedatives are out of her system. She is safe." I exhaled, a breath I felt I had been holding for 24 hours. Downstairs, the Vances arrived. They walked into the grand ballroom as if they owned it. My father had rented a tuxedo that was a size too small, and my mother wore a dress that sparkled too much for a daytime ceremony. Bella, here sporting a heavy layer of foundation to cover the bruise on her cheek, strutted in with her head held high. They were confident. Why wouldn't they be? They believed Ethan had agreed to pay the blackmail money. They believed they still had leverage because they didn't know Mark had defected. They believed Mia was just at the hospital and would be returned to them later. They worked the room, sipping champagne they couldn't pronounce, boasting to anyone who would listen. "Yes, we're the bride's parents," my father told a grim-faced CEO of a major investment bank. "We practically built her career. She owes it all to our upbringing." The CEO, who was actually one of Ethan's business partners and knew the truth, just nodded politely and moved away, clutching his drink. "Where is the groom?" Bella asked loudly, scanning the room. "I need to have a word with my new brother-in-law about the arrangements." She was looking for her payday. She was looking for the check. What she didn't know was that the doors were locked, not to keep people out, but to keep them in. The security team, burly men in earpieces discreetly positioned at every exit, had strict orders. Nobody leaves until the show is over. I stood up, smoothing the silk of my gown. It was time, not just to get married, but to execute the most public, devastating takedown in New York society history. The ceremony began. A string quartet played softly as I walked down the aisle. I walked alone. The guests whispered, noticing the absence of my father by my side, but I held my head high. I didn't need him to give me away. I belonged to myself. I reached the altar where Ethan stood. He looked magnificent in a bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo, but his eyes were serious. He squeezed my hand, a silent signal. It's time. The officiant began the vows, his voice echoing in the silent rotunda. If anyone present knows of any reason why this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever. Hold your peace. It was the moment everyone dreaded in movies. In real life, it was usually just a formality. But today, Bella stood up. She was sitting in the front row, smirking. She opened her mouth, ready to create a scene, ready to demand her money publicly if she had to. Creak! The heavy double doors at the back of the room swung open with a groan that silenced the entire hall. Everyone turned. Bella froze, her mouth half open. It wasn't a jealous ex-lover. It wasn't a late guest. These two uniformed NYPD officers walked in, flanked by a man in a sharp gray suit carrying a leather briefcase. The officers didn't look at me. They didn't look at Ethan. They marched straight down the center aisle, their boots thudding on the carpet, heading directly for the front row. My father, Robert, stood up, indignant. "What is this? Who invited the police? This is a private event." The man in the gray suit stepped forward. He was the district attorney. "Robert Vance," the DA said, his voice projecting clearly without a microphone. "Linda Vance, you are under arrest." A gasp rippled through the crowd. My mother clutched her pearls. "Arrest? For what? We are the bride's parents." "For grand larceny, wire fraud, identity theft, and—" The DA paused, looking at Bella, who was slowly sinking back into her chair. "Or conspiracy to traffic a minor." The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face turned purple. "This is a mistake. You have no proof. Who accused us?" Ethan stepped down from the altar. He let go of my hand and walked toward them. He took off his glasses, and for the first time, the gentle professor mask was completely gone. He looked like a shark smelling blood in the water. "I did," Ethan said calmly. "You?" My father laughed nervously, looking around at the guests for support. You're just a school teacher, Ethan. You don't have the authority to arrest anyone. This is harassment. I'll sue you for every penny of your teacher's salary." Ethan smiled. It was a terrifying smile. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a gold-plated business card case. He didn't hand a card to my father. He handed it to the DA, who nodded respectfully. "I may teach economics at Columbia on Tuesdays," Ethan said, his voice smooth and projecting to the back of the room. "But the rest of the week, I am the majority shareholder of Caldwell Holdings." A murmur of recognition swept through the Wall Street guests. Caldwell Holdings, the venture capital firm that owned half the city's fintech infrastructure, the firm that owned the very bank my father owed money to. My parents' faces drained of color. "The loan sharks you borrowed from?" Ethan continued, stepping closer until he towered over my shrinking father. "They work for a subsidiary of a bank I acquired last month. The fake medical records you tried to blackmail me with? My forensic team authenticated them as forgeries 3 days ago. And the house you tried to trick Audrey into signing for? My lawyers found the hidden liens on the property this morning." Ethan turned to the crowd, addressing the room like a boardroom. "These people," he gestured to my family, "came here to sell their daughter. They came here to sell their granddaughter. They thought I was a weak academic they could bully. They were wrong." "He's lying!" Bella shrieked, jumping up. "He's making it up. Audrey, tell them we love you." I looked at Bella. I looked at the sister who had ruined my dress, drugged her child, and tried to ruin my life. I stepped down from the altar to stand beside Ethan. I picked up a remote control from the podium. "I don't need to say anything, Bella," I said softly. "The evidence speaks for itself." I pressed a button. The giant screens that were supposed to show our romantic photo montage flickered to life. But instead of pictures of us kissing in the park, grainy black and white footage appeared. It was dated 10 years ago. It was the interior of my grandmother's shop. The ballroom fell dead silent. On the massive 8K LED screens, the footage played out with undeniable clarity. Ethan's tech team had worked miracles, digitally enhancing the old VHS tape recovered from the store's security system. In the video, a younger Bella, 16 years old, crept into the frame. She wasn't alone. My mother stood by the door keeping watch. Bella knelt by the floor safe, her hands expertly spinning the dial. She took out stacks of cash and shoved them into her backpack. Then she pulled out a pearl necklace, the same one they accused me of stealing, and laughed. "Audrey is so stupid," teenage Bella said on the tape, the audio fuzzy but legible. "She'll never know. Dad will kick her out, and I'll get the big room." My mother in the video nodded. "Just make sure you hide the receipt in her bag." The gasps from the audience were audible. My friends from high school, my business partners, the elite of New York, they all saw it. The narrative of the bad daughter that had haunted me for a decade dissolved in seconds. I looked at my parents. My mother was trembling, clutching her chest. My father looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. But the video wasn't done. The screen flickered again. This time it was audio only. A waveform danced on the screen. It was the recording from Mark's flash drive. "If Audrey doesn't pay up," Bella's voice echoed through the high-end speakers, "we take the kid to Mexico. I found a buyer in Tijuana. They pay 20 grand for blonde girls." The room erupted. People stood up, shouting in disgust. A woman in the back threw her champagne glass at Bella. It shattered near her feet. "Monster!" someone yelled. Bella looked around wildly, panic setting in. "That's fake. That's AI. They generated it." "It's not AI, Bella," a small voice said. From the side entrance, a nurse wheeled in a small chair. Mia sat there wrapped in a blanket, holding a stuffed jellycat bunny. She looked pale, but awake. "You said you were going to sell me," Mia said into the microphone the nurse held for her. "I heard you tell Grandma. You said I was worth more than a car." That was the final nail. There was no recovering from the testimony of a 6-year-old victim. The atmosphere in the ballroom shifted from shock to mob justice. The shame was palpable, heavy as a physical weight. My parents huddled together, shrinking under the glare of hundreds of eyes. But Bella? Bella didn't shrink. She snapped. Realizing her life was over, no money, no reputation, jail time looming, she let out a feral scream. Her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "You ruined everything," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You always had everything, the grades, the looks, the luck. I just wanted my share." She lunged. She didn't run for the exit. She ran for me. She grabbed a steak knife from a nearby guest table and sprinted up the few steps to the altar. The security guards were fast, but she was closer. "If I can't have it, nobody can," she yelled, raising the knife. I stood frozen, the silk of my dress feeling like a trap. But she never reached me. Ethan didn't just step in front of me. He moved with the precision of someone who had anticipated this exact moment. He caught Bella's wrist in midair, twisting it sharply. The knife clattered to the marble floor with a metallic ring. But Bella, fueled by adrenaline, flailed wildly. She shoved Ethan back and stumbled sideways, losing her balance. She crashed spectacularly into the massive 6-tier wedding cake. The tower of fondant sugar flowers and cream teetered for a second before collapsing on top of her. It was a grotesque, almost comedic ending to her rage. She lay there, sprawled on the floor, her neon-pink dress covered in white frosting, struggling to get up while slipping on the slick icing. The room didn't scream. They laughed. A low chuckle started from the back and spread like a wildfire. The mighty influencer, the girl who wanted to be a queen. Cab was now rolling in cake like a toddler having a tantrum. Mia, watching from her wheelchair, didn't laugh. She just watched, her face solemn. "Police!" the DA barked. "Get her out of there!" 2 officers stepped forward, hauling Bella up from the mess. She was crying now, mascara running down her face, mixing with the frosting. It was pathetic, it was tragic, and it was over. The officers dragged Bella, kicking and screaming, toward the exit. My parents followed in handcuffs, heads bowed, escorted by 2 stern-faced detectives. As they passed the rows of guests, my father looked up, scanning the crowd for sympathy. He found none. Even Mark, standing by the door, turned his back on them. My mother stopped as she passed me. She looked at my dress, then at Ethan, and finally at me. For a second, I thought she might apologize. "You ungrateful brat," she hissed. "We gave you life." I looked her in the eye, feeling lighter than I had in 10 years. And today I'm taking it back. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing away the toxicity that had poisoned my existence for a decade. The sirens outside wailed, fading into the distance like a dying storm. The silence that followed was heavy, but clean. It was the silence of a battlefield after the last cannon has fired. Ethan turned to the DA. "Thank you, Arthur. We'll send the full evidence file to your office by morning." "We have enough to put them away for a long time, Ethan." The DA nodded. "Especially with the child trafficking conspiracy. That carries a mandatory minimum." I walked over to where Mia sat. She looked small and fragile in the big room. I knelt down, ignoring the risk of staining my Verawang dress on the floor. "It's over, Mia," I said softly. "They can't hurt you anymore." Mia looked at the door where her mother had just been dragged out. Then she looked at me. Where will I go? To a foster home? Her voice trembled on the word foster. She knew what that meant. She had heard Bella threaten it 1,000 times. I looked at Ethan. He was already walking toward us, holding a thick folder in his hand. He didn't look like a CEO or a shark anymore. He looked like the man I loved. "No foster homes," Ethan said, kneeling beside me. He opened the folder. Inside were adoption papers already drafted, needing only a signature and a judge's stamp, which, given the circumstances and Ethan's connections, would be expedited by Monday. "We have a big house," Ethan smiled at Mia. "Boy, it has a garden and a piano, and nobody yells there." The wedding reception that followed was subdued, but genuinely joyful. The drama had purged the room of pretense. People weren't celebrating a merger or a social alliance anymore. They were celebrating survival. After the speeches and the toasts, Ethan pulled me aside. "There's one more thing," he said, leading me to a quiet corner of the terrace overlooking Central Park. He handed me a small, heavy iron key. It looked old, rusted in places, with a tag that read 1402 Oak Street. My breath hitched. "This is Grandma's house key." "I bought it," Ethan said simply, "before your father tried to trick you with the deed transfer. I bought the property through a shell company last week. I paid off the liens, cleared the debt, and put the title in your name. Clean and clear." I stared at the key. That house was the only place I had ever felt safe as a child. It was where my grandmother taught me to read, where she told me I was smart, where she hid her pearl necklace, not from me, but for me. "You bought it back?" I whispered, tears finally spilling over, not tears of anger, but of relief. "It's not just a house, Audrey," Ethan said, wiping a tear from my cheek. "It's your history. They tried to steal it, taint it, use it against you. I wanted to give it back to you purified. You can keep it, sell it, burn it down. It's yours. You have control now." I clutched the key to my chest. For so long I had defined myself by what I had lost, my family, my reputation, my home. Now, holding this piece of rusted iron, I realized I hadn't lost anything. I had just been waiting to reclaim it. "We'll keep it," I said, looking out at the city lights. "We'll fix it up, for Mia. She needs to know that not everything from where we come from is bad. She needs to know there was love there once." Ethan kissed my forehead. "Then that's what we'll do." Behind us, inside the ballroom, the band began to play La Vie en Rose. Through the glass doors, I saw Mia laughing as one of the waiters showed her a magic trick. She looked like a normal child. She looked free. 6 months later. Snow fell gently outside the window, blanketing the Pennsylvania countryside in white. Inside the renovated farmhouse at 1402 Oak Street, a fire crackled in the stone hearth. I sat in the oversized armchair, a mug of hot chocolate in my hand, watching the scene before me. Ethan was at the Steinway piano, a housewarming gift to ourselves, teaching Mia how to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Mia frowned in concentration, her small fingers pressing the keys. "Like this, Uncle Ethan?" "Just like that," Ethan smiled. "You're a natural." "Dad," I corrected gently from the chair, "remember what the judge said on Tuesday?" Mia stopped playing. She turned to look at me, her eyes wide. The adoption was final. The ink was dry. Bella was serving a 15-year sentence for fraud and trafficking. My parents were in a minimum security facility for conspiracy. They were gone, erased from our daily lives. "Dad," Mia tested the word, a shy smile spreading across her face. "Okay, like this, Dad?" Ethan beamed, his eyes crinkling at the corners. It was the happiest I had ever seen him. I looked down at the MacBook Air on my lap. I was no longer just the CEO of a crisis management firm. I had started a foundation, the Vance Initiative, dedicated to providing legal and financial aid to victims of familial financial abuse. I was using my skills, my money, and my story to make sure no other 18-year-old girl would ever be thrown out into the rain with nothing. On the coffee table lay a copy of Atomic Habits and a sketchbook, where I had been drawing plans for a new garden in the spring. Grandma's garden. I closed the laptop. The crisis was managed. The war was over. "Hey," Ethan called out, closing the piano lid. "Who wants to help me bake cookies? I found Grandma's old recipe book in the attic." "Me!" Mia shouted, jumping off the bench. I stood up and walked over to them, Oss wrapping my arms around my husband and my daughter. The house smelled of pine wood and peace. "Don't come home," my father had said all those years ago. "Nobody wants you here." He was wrong. I was home. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was wanted. And so the curtain falls on Audrey's journey. To our amazing friends, are you still here with us? If you are, it's because something in this story touched a chord deep within your heart. Audrey taught us a powerful lesson. Family isn't defined by blood, but by who stands beside you when the storm hits. She proved that we are not prisoners of our past. As the great Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Audrey didn't win by becoming toxic like her family. She won by choosing justice, protecting the innocent, and building a life filled with the love she was once denied. She turned her obstacle into the way. If you are fighting your own battles today, let this be your sign. You have the power to walk away from what hurts you and build your own sanctuary. If this story gave you hope or satisfied your sense of justice, please hit that like button. It helps us reach more souls. Share this with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength, and subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Until next time, stay strong and write your own ending.